Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome. My name is Kira Stock. I'm Assistant Supervisor of Patron Experience here at the Framingham Public Library. And I welcome you to today's program, those of you in person and those of you watching on YouTube as well. So a few housekeeping notes up front. If you haven't already, please silence any cell phones. There will be a time for questions after the presentation. And there are evaluation forms in the back of the room. If you wouldn't mind filling that out after the program today, let us know what you thought about today's program and also any ideas you may have for future programs. We love to hear about that. And speaking of future programs, next month's Lunchtime Learning Series is Preserving Family Treasures, and that will be led by Anna Tucker, who is the Executive Director of the Framingham History Center. So she's going to be discussing how to care for objects and preserve stories and memories that have been passed down through generations. Also tonight is the Friday night movie here in this room at 7 p.m. and the movie is Elvis. So without further ado, I ask you to please help me welcome today's presenter, Samela St. Pierre.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the introduction, Kira. As she mentioned, my name is Samela St. Pierre, and I'll be leading you through an hour-long lecture, Introduction to South American Myths and Cosmology. We're focusing mostly, or almost exclusively, on pre-Columbian myths. So that's before the Europeans landed on the continent. And as mentioned, I'll have a question and answer segment a little further into the presentation, but if you have a burning question or you can't hear me or understand me, just raise your hand and I'll do my best. Okay, so I think context is a little bit important to start. So who are we focusing on for this presentation? And that is the Inca. So who were the Inca? Who are the Inca? So the Inca were a South American civilization that became the largest civilization in the Americas, North and South included. And it's often called an empire, and I will be using that word for lack of a better English word to describe the way they functioned. So they became the largest empire in the Americas. They were ethnically Quechua at first, but as they went from a small hamlet into a whole civilization, a whole empire, they absorbed the Aymara people, or ethnically diverse than the Quechua, and smaller other ethnic groups in the area. And that's why many people still claim Inca ethnicity today. They're claiming that indigenous root system, if you will. So what were the Inca famous? What are they famous for? Actually, the same stuff they were famous for 600 years ago. And that is their impressive engineering and building accomplishments. Some of you've shared that you've been to Machu Picchu before, which is imaged there. That actually was not the capital of the kingdom. It was a spiritual resort and temple for the greatest emperor of the kingdom. But it does give you an idea of the layout with the tiered terrace farming that really revolutionized what agriculture could accomplish in a terrain as steep, harsh, and elevated as the Andes Mountains. They also created an extensive Andean road system. So if you are a history nerd, you know that all great civilizations had a great road system, and the Inca were no different. They were able to unite road systems from past kingdoms and past civilizations of South America into one militarily run exclusively road system that actually covers over 20,000 miles of footpaths. No wheels, no horses. This is all alpaca, llama, foot carried execution. Okay, so where exactly are we talking about? So when I say South American, I'm being a little generous. We're really focused here today on the western, like the California part of South America, all right? And this is, this orange part is the Inca Empire to its fullest extent, which would cover modern day Ecuador, Chile, Peru, Argentina, Bolivia, and even for those very short lived, a bit of Western Colombia. It was like 4 years before it all came crashing down. However, that's where we're talking about. Okay. So when were the Inca in power? So the starting date is a little bit rough around the edges, but generally the consensus is 1200 current era, and it all came crashing down in 1533 with the arrival of the Spanish a couple years earlier. And so what does that even mean? To give you a perspective of when that was, since most people probably are more accustomed to European history, we're talking the Middle Ages to the Renaissance. So that's what's happening in Europe while the Incas are happening in South America. The painting here is Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui. So Pachacuti means reformer of the world in Quechua, and Yupanqui means with honor. So he was not born with that name. The name was bestowed upon him when he rose to Sapa Inca status, which we'll get to as one of our myths today. But it gives you an idea of the mindset of why they expanded. They believed they were reforming the world with honor, and I think that's important. So, on to the myths. Creation seems like a great place to start, or a logical place to start. So the great creator god of the Inca, and quite honestly, quite a few civilizations before the Inca, is Viracocha. And so he exists in a void, just in darkness at the primordial lake waters of Lake Titicaca, which is a place that you can visit. It's on the border of Peru and Bolivia. And he decides to create humanity. So he creates all these humans and is like, all right, don't lie, don't steal, don't be lazy. And that works for like 2 minutes before they start just fighting one another, cheating one another, just being terrible. And he's like, oh, no. And he raises the waters of Lake Titicaca to flood everything. So this is our South American Great Flood story, right from the beginning. Get it out of the way. And the people who aren't disintegrated into the ground are turned into stone, and still surrounding the waters of Lake Titicaca are these bizarre stone formations naturally occurring, and we say that's the first race of humans that were like, humans 1.0, fail, okay, destroyed. All right, so what went wrong? Well, he realized his words were not enough to guide humanity to be righteous. And so he goes to the island of the sun and the island of the moon at the lake, and he tells Inti and Mama Kia, the sun and the moon, to rise, and the stars, Koyur, to rise out of these waters and to populate the sky so that morning or night the people have guidance. And light is the key to guidance. The light is the key to goodness. So he does, and then he creates humans, and he gives them more specific instructions and places them in caves and says, you, Aymara people, you will dress this way, you will believe this, and this is what you will eat. He says, you, Quechua people, this is what you will eat, this is how you will dress, and it explains why different people from different areas dress, eat, act differently. And he will decide when you emerge from your cave. So it's like different civilizations emerge at different times. So what about this sun and moon god anyway? So sun gods and moon goddesses are something that happens a lot. If you're here to Joseph Campbell, like you'll see a lot of sun gods and moon goddesses. So in the beginning, uh, these two were equally worshipped in the civilization. This is before the Inca were an empire, when they were still a hamlet, a village, a tribe. They were equally worshipped, and they equally shone in the sky. So if you can imagine, daytime, how we experience it today. Nighttime, as bright as daytime, but with cool moonlight. And this did not sit well with Inti, who was Mama Kia's husband. He was like, this is not right. And he grew jealous and angry, so angry and so jealous that he began to expand in heat, so much so that he scorched the surface of the moon, which is why the moon has dark spots and can no longer shine as brightly as her husband. Furthermore, Inti set the animals against Mama Kia, specifically dogs, and they bite at her throughout the month, explaining our phases of the moon that we see is actually bite marks being taken out of the moon. And as us devoted humans make sacrifices to our great goddess Mama Kia, she is replenished back to her full state. And out of spite, we can still experience the moon sometimes during the day, but we will never experience the sun at night. So this is our first example of a marriage in Inca times, but what can you do? So the founding of Cusco. So as I said, the Inca existed before they were a kingdom. Where did they come from? So we have the story of Manco Capac and the golden staff. So Manco Capac is arguably a historical figure that existed in real life, whose story became mythologized. Or maybe the man, the myth, the legend existed the way he did back in magical times. So Inti, the sun god, decides the Inca are my chosen people, and they deserve a capital. So I'm going to set out a group, 8-person group, 4 men, 4 women, to find a place to found the city that will be in my honor. And so Manco Capac is the oldest of the brothers, the first of the brothers. It's Manco Capac, Ayar Auca, Ayar Cachi, and Ayar Ucho, the 4 brothers. And we got Mama Okyo, Mama Wako, Mama Rawa, and Mama Ipakura. So this is like this team, this 8-person team. They're out traveling the land from the map we saw earlier, spreading the good word of the Inca, of Inti, the sun god, as the true god. And they're given, Manco Capac specifically, this golden staff with maize at the top, a symbol of what's to come, this agricultural revolution to come. And Inti says, when your staff sinks into the ground with ease, that is the place you should found this city, right? So if you're a gardener, you kind of get that, oh, okay, that's going to be fertile land for civilization and agriculture, both quite literally. However, during this campaign to spread that good word, Ayar Cucho, one of the brothers, whose name translates to salt, brother salt in Quechua, was cruel to all the people they met and even his own followers. In fact, with his mighty slingshot, he could, with one shot, knock off an entire village off of a cliffside, which, as you can imagine, was not great for public relations. And the rest of the team was like, oh, you have to calm down. But he wouldn't. And so Manco Capac, being this great leader, decides we've got to take him out, but we can't fight him in public because that would also be bad for public relations. We can't be seen as internally fighting. So he says, hey, brother, I left some stuff in the cave we started out at. And here's the thing about these 8 figures. They were not born of, they were born of the earth at a place called Bakarik Tampu, which is House of Production. It's a cliffside with 3 windows. So So you can imagine like this square, but just set back times 3. And the different tribes of the world, or their known world, came out of these 3 windows at different times, just like Viracocha demanded they would. This tribe of the Incas started by these 8 people. When they leave, that's where our story had just started. Manco Capac sends Ayacucho back to this window to retrieve the items that he'd forgotten. And he sends Dampuchanque, who's a devoted follower of the Inca, trusted confidant, to sneak behind him. And when Ayarcachi enters the window, enters the cave, Tampuchankai brings a giant boulder and it closes him in there, so avoiding to even need to fight with him at all. And not before Ayarcachi curses him to turn into stone, and he's still there to this day. But he was never able to escape, so that's been taken care of. He's just immortally, imprisoned in a stone cave. The other 7 continue. So finally, in the Cusco Valley, Mancar Capac sets his staff into the ground, and it sinks easily. And as further proof that it is the correct valley, a rainbow appears as a promise from God that this is the correct space. Arguably, the rainbow promise thing was an addition later by Judeo-Christians, Europeans, because rainbows is a motif that's been used in like Judeo-Christianity as a promise from God, and it's not actually that easy, we'll get to it, to like decipher what was added in by these Spanish historians that were writing down these Quechua myths. Because the Inca, did not have a written form of keeping records. It was all oral tradition, like we're doing today. But that leaves a lot of room for interpretation. But I thought a rainbow might still have, rainbows do still have significance to the Inca. They are actually double-headed snake dragons. So that's why you never see the end of a rainbow, because they're 2 heads of a dragon. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so here we are. We've chosen the place. They set up shop. Mama Okyo, Manco Capac's wife, she takes over the southern half of the kingdom. Manco Capac takes over the northern, and their brothers and sisters go around the area. So Mama Okyo is the mother and fertility goddess. She is the educator of the people. What does she educate people in? Specifically women, the art of spinning thread, sewing, science in regards to creating dyes and pigments, household duties. And this educating of the people is part of this campaign of the Inca to legitimize and validate the expansion of the empire. Look at these people, they're just herding llamas. Here we are, we know how to make bright colored clothes. We know these intricate ways of creating things that are gonna last longer. We know metalsmithing and ceramics, and we know these advanced forms of agriculture and irrigation. Don't you wanna join us? Why fight us? We have so much to offer you for a peaceful induction into our society. And so we know, or you will know, because I'm about to tell you, historically, archaeologically, that there were actually advanced forms of spinning and clothing making and architecture and irrigation even like hundreds of years before the Inca. And so it's not like the Inca walked out in the year 1200 and people were like in loincloths in 30-degree weather. But it was part of the campaign of like, we are civilizing people with our metropolis and our metropolitan ideas. And Mama Okyo is part of that. Okay, so I told you we get back to Pachacuti, Inca Yupanqui. So this is the turning point for the civilization, where it goes from a tribe who's constantly being attacked and picked on and attacking and picking on the other surrounding tribes to a force to be reckoned with, the reason we're talking about them today, and they made it to the history books against all odds. Their small stone, like a fortress city, if you will, is about to be attacked by the big bads of the day, and those are the Chimu people. The Chimu is the largest city-state in South America at the time, and they've had just about enough of this little Inca uprising. So they're coming in, bless you, with their giant army, and it is assured destruction, like one-sided destruction. And so the Sapa Inca, the emperor, he is like, you know what? I'm going to do what's best for my people. Let's run away. Like, let's evacuate. Don't even, like, let's not even waste our time fighting. Let's go. Pachacuti, who's an army general, and a small contingent of soldiers decide to stay back because though they know they'll die, at least the civilization, the Inca tribe, will have fallen fighting. So he gets the blessing from the Sapa Inca. Everybody leaves except Pachacuti and this like small group of soldiers. And as they see the Chimu walking over, over the path, and they're like, oh, they know this is a suicide mission. Pachacuti dedicates this battle to Inti, the sun god, and says, I dedicate all blood that is spilled today in honor of you, the true God. Inti, as you may have gathered from our early story, has an ego and decides to bless Pachacuti not just with the great afterlife, but by animating the very stones that lay on this mountainside into stone warriors, golems, that raise from the ground and crush mercilessly the Chimu army, not just the army, to the point where the Chimu never recover at all, historically. And they send a messenger to the emperor. They bring back all of the Inca, all the people, back to Cusco. And what do they see? Smashed armies. So, was Pachacuti a military genius who was able to weaponize the stones on the mountain with gravity in a way that crushed the army? Or was he helped by God through an army of stone golems? Who's to say? Either way, he was promoted to Sapa Inca, incarnation of Inti himself, and his name was upgraded to expander of the world with honor. So myths and folklore. Well, what's the difference between like a myth and a folk tale? So folk tales generally have a moral to the story. Think Aesop's fables. They're trying to transmit a direct message to you, and it's often about humans or animals, like anthropomorphized animals who can talk. Myths explain the natural world to a people, and they have to do with gods, goddesses, deities. So how is our natural phenomena explained? We have the sun, we have the moon, we have stars. So how do we explain the dawn? Who's in charge of the dawn? So the Inca goddess Jasca is the goddess of dawn. She's the long-haired morning star Venus. Flowers. She is also a goddess of twilight and dusk. So Inti, ego, strong, sunburns, things wilt in the sun. Also, like it's life-giving, but it also can be scorching. So how could that be the same energy as a sunrise or a sunset? The Incas say it's not. It's Chasca. Chasca is in charge of actually much more life-giving, life-affirming sunshine from sunrise and sunset. And they believe that that's what was feeding the plants. because look at a flower at 1 p.m. in August. It is struggling. But look at a flower at sunrise. It's full of life, and we can thank Chaska. And Chaska is cool because she directly communicates with her followers, and that when you ask her of things, if you question, ask her for begin a conversation with her, she answers directly to you without the need of a priestess or a priest in the clouds. So, cloud gazing is a spiritual practice in which you commune with Chaska and you wait to get your answer in the shapes of the clouds. So, I just love her. So, that's it. She needs to be in here. Okay, Pachamama is probably a name, maybe the only name that you've recognized so far, because she's really been honored even in recent times. When people think South American gods and goddesses, they think Pachamama, earth goddess. So Pacha, earth, mama, mother. All right, literally earth mother, and that name has even expanded out of what would have been the Inca Empire into like Brazil and stuff. She's also just so she's also responsible for earthquakes. So earthquakes, landslides, mudslides, all the stuff that still plagues South America today, and a lot of people never stopped sacrificing to her, or I should say making offerings. I think sacrifice is like maybe feels a little bloody, but often offerings to her are coca leaves, are incense, things like that left at the roadside before a road trip. You have to imagine, like, the people of South America, when the Europeans came, had to weigh, who are you more afraid of? These Europeans that have a sword at your throat, or these gods that can destroy your entire village, and decide at what level are they willing to transgress one side or the other to survive. And some things have just lasted. It just wasn't worth not sacrificing to, like not believing in, not offering to, even in the face of Christian oppression. And Pachamama is one of those deities. So I have her here illustrated with the 3 realms of Inca existence. So there's Hanan Pacha, Hanan upper, Pacha earth. Upper world is the sky, the celestial world, the heavens, the realm of birds, gods. Then there's Kai Pacha, that's where we exist, the world of animals, humans. Then there's Uku Pacha, and that's guarded by a giant snake. The underworld is precious metals, gold, silver, and the afterlife, although often afterlife spirits kind of float between the 3, but yes, the demon world as well. So we have Hanan, Kai, and Uku Pacha. And here we go. Okay, so how do we explain wind? Mama Waira, so mama, mother, Waira, wind, Mama Waira. And so, okay, wind. Why do we need it? Why do we need a goddess to pray to for that? Well, consider living on a cliffside with limited rain, and well, actually, the irrigation system was amazing, the way they were able to do it. But wind will strip things of, will dry things out for good or for bad. But the Inca were really brilliant metal workers, and the reason I bring that up is that to work with metal, you have to melt it down. Or you don't have to, but the Inca did. And to melt it down, you need a furnace. And to build a furnace, you need fire. And fire needs oxygen. And when you're 10,000 feet up in the air, there's significantly less oxygen. So, what is the answer for that? Well, genetically, people who are Inca have larger rib cages, larger lung capacities, and their blood actually carries higher amounts of oxygen so that they're able to function in a way that us low elevation people could not actually physically keep up with. For metal fires, they were able to harness the wind on the windiest part of the cliff sides and funnel it into the furnaces to feed the fires and get them at heats high enough that they could melt down all these precious metals that they found, right, in Kai Pacha, the underworld, or Uku Pacha, I should say. Right. And Mama Wire was there to help. Then you think we'll do it live. So, all right, so we have sun, so we have wind. Rain is always super important, isn't it? I mean, what people don't have a good rain god? So Iapa is our Inca rain god, or he's sometimes called Apu Iapa, which just means spirit Iapa. But he's not just the god of rain. He's the god of storms and thunder. And this man is emotional. And the Inca know it. He's always getting in fights with other gods and demons. If he's walking by and he sees a little spat, he instigates. He's like, let's go. It's quite destructive, actually, but he has a soft heart for one thing and one thing only, and it's not a woman, it's black dogs. He just loves them. And so, during times of drought, and everyone's praying and sacrificing to Iapa, and no rain is to be seen, people would tie black dogs outside of his temple with just empty water bowls. And days would pass by. And right when the dogs would be at the point where they're going to die of exposure and no water, it would rain. So they would force him to make it rain to save his precious dogs. How does he make it rain? Well, in the sky, there's Mayu, the cosmic river, and we know Mayu as the Milky Way galaxy. To the Inca, this is a cosmic river that flows for the gods. And Iapa collects the cosmic river water in pottery. And when enough people have sacrificed to him, or he feels like it, he takes his sling, which is like a slingshot, was a very popular weapon, or common weapon back then. And he will slingshot at the turning pot, shattering it, and allowing all that cosmic water, river water, to fall on us, and that's what we experience as rain. Okay, so earlier when we were setting up the context, who were the Inca? Who, what, where, when? I specifically skipped why. Why even bother? Why are we studying their myths? And I would say, because there's wisdom in mythology and the folklore of people that we're really missing out on by not engaging with it. Oh, yes, thank you. By not engaging with it, we're missing out on all this potential wisdom. B, because because it's fun. It's just fun. I mean, who doesn't love a good story? And we're always just rehashing things again and again, and there's sequels, and we're redoing stories, and there's so many stories in the world that we haven't even touched the first time, or I guess we did in the 1400s, but we can revisit. I believe we can. And then on a personal, selfish note, I just feel like, in my experience, as a Peruvian Dominican woman, Latinos, or whatever you want to call us, whatever we want to call us, we can't even decide, are having a serious identity crisis. And how can people know themselves if they don't know where they came from? And that's what studying our ancestry is all about. Reconnecting with where you came from so you can decide what's worth keeping and what's worth letting go as we move forward. And that's why. And that's why. That's why we're studying their myths today. Thank you for coming. No, there's more. There's more. Okay. Okay, and then D, the real reason that myths are studied is because we can infer values and characteristics about a people by listening to their stories. And so what can we infer about the Inca and their stories? Yes, I can do this in this time. So the Incas have 3 laws. You can think of them as federal laws. Otherwise, every section had its own governor and mayor, if you will, and they had all of their rules. But there's only 3 laws handed down by the emperor, and 3 laws only. Amusua, amuyuya, amaqueya. Do not steal. It is a highly socialist, is the closest thing I can come to society. There was no money, no bartering. Everything was provided for you, and you provided everything. Almost like 98%, almost everybody was a farmer. A third of your crop went to the emperor to feed the emperor, the military, the priest caste. A third of your food went to the stores, the granaries, for times of trouble. And a third you kept for yourself and your family unit, which is like 50 deep often. And clothing was regulated, everything was regulated. So if you have everything that you need, how dare you steal? Do not lie. Well, we all know that lying can be, can get us all in trouble, but for a militaristic society, lying could be the difference between survival and extinction. And so lying, and then do not be lazy. Some people, I think maybe in our modern day might find this surprising, that do not be lazy is as important as not stealing. But in society in which everything is provided for you, it is only provided for you because you are also the one providing for it. And so if you don't pay your taxes, we're gonna tie you up by your hair over the river until it rips out, and then you're gonna drown because we've bound your hands. Oh, you lied about how much grain grew and you hid some. We're gonna tie you up on a pole and push you off of a cliffside. Like, there were not like little punishments. They were meant to make an example of you, to shame your family into reforming it, your family unit into reforming itself. When I say family unit, I'm talking 50 to 75 people who live up the mountain. There's no nuclear family to speak of. And so the punishments are swift, the rules are really straightforward. Okay. Indecision is punished. Okay. The place that you're meant to be in society is the place that you're meant to be in society. It only works. It's not upward mobility. Not really. If you're in the military, maybe you can move up from soldier to officer. That's kind of it. If you're a priest, you might move up to high priest, but that's kind of it. And so here we have Kaviase. This is Kaviase. So for a while, she ends up ascending into a goddess of fertility, but that's later. In this scene, she's still just this beautiful young woman. Everyone's in love with her, not just humans, but also lesser gods and deities. And everyone just gives her gifts, and she's like, I haven't chosen a husband yet. I haven't chosen a husband yet. So what does that tell us? Certain women did have power in who they got to marry. So she's keeping all these guys on a string and at arm's distance and accepting all of these gifts and not ever saying yes to anyone. She doesn't plan on saying yes. She's gonna ride this out as long as she can. Well, Goni Raya, who started off as a lunar god, like a moon god, until the Inca took over. He got demoted to lesser moon god when Mama Kia rose to power. And then by the time the Inca became empire, he became a trickster god. Everyone basically gaslit him and was like, you're not a moon god. You're a lesser moon god. You were never a lesser moon god. You're a liar. So he was like, oh, well, I'm a liar? So he does things like this. transforms himself. He's a great, think Loki from Norse mythology, transforms himself, inseminates a lucuma fruit, and drops this perfect lucuma fruit down on Gaviasa's lap. She can't help but eat it. She's like, this is meant to be. Gets pregnant, as one does. And 9 months later, she holds a council, all the men who've ever flirted with her, and says, who is this baby's daddy? And all of them are like, we wish we were, really, but no. And there's Goniraya in the crowd as a beggar. And now we've explained, everything is provided for you in this society. Beggars are not readily welcomed. He knows what he's doing. So he's ragged and dirty and just... She goes, well, I'm putting this baby on the floor, and whoever he crawls to is the daddy. Of course, puts the baby down. Baby crawls right to Konirai, the most wretched person in the whole bunch. And Gaviasa is beside herself. She snatches up the baby, turns around, and just makes a run for it. Konirai is like, wait, just kidding. Turns himself into like a beautiful version of himself. And he's like, I was just kidding. And she never turns around. She's so ashamed that she got pregnant by this like wretched creature. And he starts chasing her. She runs all the way to the Pacific Ocean, throws herself into it, and turns herself and her child into islands that you can still see today off the coast of the Coricancha. Goniraya spends this whole time chasing after her, and on the way he keeps bumping into animals. And the animals tell him, he goes, I'm looking for Gaviasa, have you seen her? And the fox goes, yeah, forever ago, you'll never catch up to her. And Koniraya goes, great, I curse you, you smell bad, people will always hunt you and despise you. He's going, Jaguar, have you seen Gaviasa? I'm looking for her. He's like, oh yeah, you're super close. Pick it up a little, she's right around the corner. Great, I bless you. Everyone will revere you. Even in death, you will be honored because your skins will be worn into battle and into ritual. And he meets all the animals, and he gives them their attributes that we still know today. So, on his travels, he makes it to the Pacific Ocean, but he's like just south of where they're supposed to be, to the island of Urpiwachai, who is the fish goddess. And he gets there, and Urpiwachai is nowhere to be seen, but all of her beautiful daughters are. And so he's like, okay, I know I just ran across an entire country for Gaviasa, but like, hey ladies, and tries to seduce them. And they're like, oh, we're like not interested. And he's like, that's cool, I'll just like rape you. And they are like, no, we know how to turn into birds. So they do. They literally transform into birds, escaping Koniraya, and they go in to tell their mother. Koniraya is like so angry that he takes all of the fish that are on the island and releases them into the ocean. Fish did not exist before this moment. So they were only for the gods. And now he's like, oh, yeah, God's this. Populates the whole world's oceans with the fish that he releases from this island. So, where was Urpiwachai? Doesn't she know there's a crazy trickster god out in the world? Well, it turns out that she was comforting Gaviasa, who is now a stone island, because she can transform into fish. And so Gaviasa and Urpiwachai to this day, if you visit these islands and you see birds or fish on the islands, you know that it's Urpiwachai visiting her friend Gaviasa so she doesn't feel alone in her prison. And then you think, oh, Mama Kia is in this like really toxic relationship with the sun. She's always getting like eaten at. But wait, because Koyor is actually the goddess of stars. And she comforts Mama Kia even when she's completely depleted new moon, no moon in the sky. Koyor goes, don't worry, I got you. I will keep lighting the world while you recover. And so what can we infer? Female friendships are highly valued in this society. Okay. So, thanks, guys. So I just spoke a lot. But does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? Yes. Mm-hmm. Sure. So so I'm going to repeat your question so that people online can hear what you said. So the question slash comment was about the civilizations, the people that led up to the Inca. So yes. So as I said, the Inca were not, as much as their PR agency will tell you, we're not the great civilizers of South America. In fact, there were other great civilizations before, including the Mochi, the Tiwanaku, the Nazca, the list goes on, that were able to create cities and like big metropolitan areas and really advance agriculture. And the Inca actually built upon a lot of the infrastructure that these other civilizations were able to set down. The roads weren't built by scratch. They were built upon Mochi roads, upon Tiwanaku roads. Those civilizations fell apart because of, well, sometimes it was war, and they were absorbed into another one, but more often it was actually climate. And so El Nino is this like weather pattern that happens in the Pacific Ocean. And when it hits South America, there's mudslides, it destroys everything, but it fertilizes everything because all of this rain comes in, fertile, fishy rain comes in and fertilizes all of this land. It changes the weather patterns for hundreds of years. The perfect amount of time to build a civilization and then realize, oh, there's no more fertile land. We're now living in a desert. Actually, that brings up. So, the Paracas and the Nazca cultures you were mentioning. So, how do we even get gods of the Inca? They're coming from these other cultures. So, what happens to gods when they are kind of like timed out? They usually get a kind of an epic story, an epic exit. So Khan was the creator god, this boneless flying god of the Paracas and Nazca desert, well, now desert, region, civilization. And even though it was hundreds of years later when the Inca came into power, like Nazca was ancient history to the Inca, just like the Inca's ancient history to us. Khan's name still lingered, and that is a threat to Inti. And so what happens is this story comes along where almost like a smear campaign. Okay, Khan is an angry god. He exists in dust storms. He creates a dust storm so angry that he destroys all of his followers' arable land, and it turns into desert. And that's why the Nazca civilization ended. So you better not pray to him because that's how your existence will end. So there's a lot of rebranding that the Inca were just like chef's kiss about. Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the question is there more? Yes. Oh my God, I could talk about this forever. there's so much more. I just wanted like an intro to like so you guys could kind of get like a vibe of like what the Inca are all about, and also creation myths are a good place to start. But there's so much more. So all of the paintings on the slides and all the paintings in the room, for those of you that are here, are part of a project that I've been working on. This is less than half of it, and every painting has a story. So yeah, I've kind of like just devoted my life to this right now for the past couple of years. I have books in the back that show where I get my sources from. So please don't take them. Those are my private collection, or I got them from other libraries, but you can take photos of them and then request them. You flip through them though, they're academic and just words, like text on page. And then you just like have these moments, like, so I'm like reading this, I'm like, I need to know about my past, whatever, like I'm trying to learn more. And then it's, you know, it's thick. They're thick manuscripts. And then all of a sudden there's like this story about a dragon god and like how he has an affair with this beautiful woman in a garden, but it turns out she's the daughter of this god who's fighting with the fire demon. So the fire demon kills the dragon god to get back at her dad. So her heart turns to ice and she like falls over really dramatically and becomes this mountainside that still exists to this day in northern Chile. And they believe if the mountains were ever to melt, she would reawaken in such grief because she would have no heart left because it'll have all melted out of her, that she would destroy the world. That region is struck with endless mudslides from the ice on the top of their mountains melting due to climate change. Is it climate change? Is it White Bayana's broken heart? Water, does it matter? Does it matter? Well, what comes out of this dragon princess affair? Because he was already married, let's be honest. The rainbow does. Guthu. So our double-headed dragon creature rainbow is from this love affair. And then it goes back to dry academic, they did this and they did that and this was the law. And like, yeah, you know, you just can't find photos of these things. Like nothing's illustrated and I can complain about it. I'm like, oh, I paint pictures. So that's like been my jam. That's like my whole thing is like I read through all of these texts, I find the good stuff and I make pictures about it. So there's more to come. I have a newsletter, and every week on Tuesdays, it sends you a story. Some you heard today, and many you haven't. I couldn't possibly get to everything that I've even researched and painted yet today. I have a website, and yeah. Does that answer your question? I kind of went on a tangent. I just get excited. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm an illustrator. So I'm an artist. I live here downtown Framingham, and so I paint. I paint in watercolor and ink. That's what I went to school for. I studied under amazing illustrators like Dennis Nolan and Bill Thompson and Doug Anderson, and we have a bunch of their books downstairs in the children's department. So I was taught like children's book illustration, and then after college, I kept painting a bunch of other stuff. I kept trying to like find what I cared about, and my favorite thing to paint was mythology, and religion. Like I loved studying Hinduism and Buddhism and Norse mythology, Greek mythology, and I was like, wow, I wish I came from a cool culture. Like it would be so cool to be, you know, a descendant of Helen of Troy. And I was like, what is my culture anyway? And I'm Peruvian and Dominican. I spent all my summers as a kid in Peru. And I'm like, they had a thing. They were like the Aztecs or something. Okay, no, they never met. And then I just don't do anything casually. I can't just read one book on it. I have to read all of the books on it. And then, like I said, I kept running into these stories, and I was like, why aren't there pictures of Amaru, the Dragon King? Like, why aren't there? And I'm like, oh, we can complain about it, or we can do something about it. So that's kind of my background, which was the question. I should have said that for YouTube. Sorry, YouTube. The question was, what's my background? I'm just like an artist who reads a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. All right. I am a published artist. Thank you. Yeah. So, anybody else have anything? Yeah. Yeah.
You said the Incas were already not that great empire anymore when the Spanish come.
Yeah.
Just a little.
The downfall. Okay, let's clear some stuff up real quick. All right. All right, 'cause I could give a whole hour on this, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to keep it to 120 seconds. So, by the time Francisco Pizarro, on his name, no, just kidding, showed up on the South American continent, decades and decades of smallpox had already decimated a third of the population. A third. Think of every third person in this room dead from smallpox. On top of that, do I have a slide on this? No, but this guy. He's the last Inca. He's the last Sapa Inca. His dad is on his deathbed. They all had lots of wives. There's lots of children. The line of concession, the line of succession is very complex. It's not just about who's the oldest. It's about who the old Incas also wanted. So the mummies actually played a big part in society. And he's like, hey, I know that we all agree that this kid should be the next guy. He was sick. But I promised my other wife that he should be the Inca. He should be the Sapa Inca, so we should give it to him. And so there's a fight for power after his death. So his name's Atahualpa, and there's his brother. I can't remember his name right now because I lost my notes. And they create a civil war. And you probably know from history and or logic that in civil wars, there's nothing bloodier or worse for a nation because everyone who dies is a casualty of the same nation. And so now the empire is falling apart because of this civil war. The fringes of the empire, like Colombia and Argentina, they're already the most likely to stop paying taxes low key. Now they're real. Nobody at the edges is paying any tribute to the empire because what are they going to use? The army to fight one another? They're going to use the army to come out and collect their taxes. So food stores start running low. Labor's already at a shortage. All the army's resources are being used to kill one another. And all of this crazy drama is happening, and Francisco Pizarro walks in with 48 men and is just like, hey, we're looking for the city of gold. Oh yeah, it's down there. He meets this guy who's out on the war campaign, Atahualpa, and is like, hey, let's have a meeting. You're the rightful king, and your brother's on the throne. What's up with that? And he's like, okay, yeah, fine, I'll have a meeting with you. Psych, puts him in a room, keeps him in prison, and is like, hey, you all have to fill this room with gold, or we're not giving you your Inca back. Everyone's like, actually, this solves a lot of problems. Just keep him. Yeah. And so Francisco Pizarro is able to basically leverage this guy's life to get close to his brother. He's like, hey, you're welcome for trapping your brother. I just solved a bunch of your problems, didn't I? And he's like, how about you and I put the Spanish crown behind you. Look, I have horses. Look, we look like centaurs. Isn't that magical? Look at gunpowder. We will give you what we have if you give us what you have. You stay as emperor, and we will, we won't kill you. And that's kind of how that happens. That's like really sad, but like that's the end of the Inca Empire. Yeah. You're welcome. Okay. Well, so I think that's the end. That's the end of our YouTube and all of that. But feel free to hang out a little bit. And there's like paintings. Please don't touch them. They're watercolors. So if you sneeze on them, they do get destroyed forever. Like I said, the books back there. Feel free to take pictures and flip through, but don't take them out of the room because it's taken me years to build that collection. And if you want to sign up for a newsletter or social media, any of that to connect, it is on the screen or it is on the back table by the evaluation forms. I'm not saying you have to give me 5 stars, but I wouldn't hate it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you all for coming. Please do take advantage of the paintings. Take a look at them. They're absolutely beautiful. And